Hello everyone, welcome to Sunya IAS and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we are going to talk about environmental impact assessment, very important topic. And this is not a topic which is very conceptual. This is a very theoretical topic, and theoretical topics need to be tend to be left out by the students. But that is why we have put up a separate chapter related to environment impact assessment so that you're thorough with the concept of it, thorough with the theory of it. Okay? So, as is very clear by the name, what is environmental impact assessment? That if any developmental project, or if it's not developmental, so any project at all needs to be evaluated, that whether it is impacting the environment or not, right? Because environment is being rapidly depleted, that is why it needs to be evaluated. That is what environmental impact assessment is, and it happens under the Environment Protection Act 1986. We will talk all about it, but before starting, let me just brief you a little bit about the course that we are running. This is Revise Entire Prelims syllabus through 3000 plus MCQs, where we have done Indian polity, economy, modern history, geography. Now we're doing environment ecology. We'll do art and culture, ancient medieval, science and tech as well. Basically, the goal being to make you very well aware of the current pattern of UPSC, as well as to complete the entire course in a very holistic manner. So if you are interested, if you want to practice more and more, if you get the course, you will be able to get the PDFs of the questions and the detailed answers beforehand, so that you have to come to the lectures only if and when required. So you can contact on this number, visit this website so that you can know more about this particular course. All right, let's start with the first question. Consider the following statements with reference to environment impact assessment. EIA was introduced in 1930 to anticipate the effect of developmental activity on the environment. EIA comes under the provisions of Environment Protection Act 1986, and EIA has been mandated compulsorily for 20 categories of projects which requires environmental clearance. So how many of the given statements are incorrect, it is asking. So you might think, first of all, that how is it possible that in 1930s, when the British were ruling us, there would be even a concept of EIA. They would not be interested. उस time तो environment का concept ही नहीं था, right? There was no realization of how we are impacting the environment with our actions. So there is no point that 1930 में EIA हो. So this is absolutely incorrect. Second one is absolutely correct. Although here I would like to tell you that you might think that because in 1986 the Environment Protection Act was passed in the backdrop of the Bhopal gas tragedy, the concept of EIA itself is older than that. Okay, EIA actually started in context of the River Valley projects. Fine, the River Valley projects. And primarily it was the Narmada Bachao Andolan and the Sardar Sarovar Dam, which put in a lot of discussion about how much we should be, developing at the cost of the environment. So River Valley projects ke chalte, the concept of this environment impact assessment was introduced in 1978 itself. Fine. So the purpose was that what is going to be the impact of this particular project on environment needs to be assessed. And if you remember, in 1972, we had the Stockholm Conference. So all of these things are having a linear kind of a growth. So second one is correct, first is incorrect. And EIA has been mandated compulsorily for 20 categories of projects. No, it is actually 30 categories of projects for which EIA has been mandated, and these 30 categories, as you can clearly guess, that they are the polluting industries mostly. Now so here how many statements are incorrect? Only 2 are incorrect. Now within EIA, under the Environment Protection Act 1986 also, this particular beginning of EIA in its current form, right, the environment impact assessment, This actually happened in 1994. Okay, so 8 years after the Environment Protection Act was enacted, the EIA was introduced as a new notification, through a new notification, that now these 30 plus categories of projects need compulsory environment clearance. Okay, so this much should be clear. But the concept of EIA is older than the Environment Protection Act itself. Next question. Consider the following projects with respect to environment impact assessment: bulk drug and pharma, sericulture industry, primary metallurgical industry, asbestos and asbestos product. How many of the given projects do not require clearance under EIA? So, overall, I told you that there are 30 categories which require EIA and compulsory EIA, and how to identify those industries will be identified by the fact that they will be polluting industries, right? So in the given 4 categories, just see which of the given is not a polluting category. Sericulture, if you see sericulture, it is the rearing of silkworms, right? Rearing of silkworms, and it is a traditional activity. Silk trade, remember, it was such an old trade, happened since the time of silk route. So sericulture industry is not a polluting industry, and that is why it does not require a compulsory EIA. Rest of the 3, if you see, whether it's bulk drug and pharma, then metallurgical industry is of course very polluting industry which deals with metals and polishing and fining of metals. And asbestos, we have studied about asbestos, by how asbestos leads to certain kind of diseases as well. But asbestos overall is a polluting industry only. So यहाँ पे पूछा है how many do not require. Only one, that is sericulture. It does not require a compulsory clearing. Now here, I want to tell you how EIA categorizes projects. How are projects categorized? According to the Environment Protection Act. If there is any project which is a developmental project or just a commercial project, there are 2 categories. One is category A and one is category B. Now, category A projects will compulsorily require environmental clearance. So, basically, category A projects will be the polluting projects. Okay? So, compulsory clearance चाहिए. Compulsory clearance requirement. Whenever you are making notes, just make sure that these notes do not confuse you further. If you write just compulsory clearance, you might think upon revising that project A category projects will get compulsory clearance. No, they require to take clearance compulsorily, so they will not be subjected to any kind of discretion. These are highly polluting projects. For example, just think about mining, how polluting this is and how much it will impact the land and the areas around it. So mining का EIA करना compulsory है. Then thermal power projects. Thermal power projects very polluting industry, so EIA compulsory हो गया. Then overall infrastructural projects, be it roads, be it railways, be it highways, be it airports, all these require to have compulsory environment impact assessment. ठीक है, so these are the categories, some of the categories जहां पे compulsory clearance चाहिए. Then category B में भी there are 2 further subcategories. There is B1 and there is B2. So B1 category, this B1 category will require the EIA, and this B2 category will not require EIA. Now, what is the difference between A and B? See, अगर कोई भी project है which is under A, so it does not even need to be seen कि what is the impact, whether it should be under EIA or not, whether EIA should be done or not. But when it is under category B, then there are 4 stages. There is screening, there is scoping, and so on and so forth, to assess whether this project needs to go through the process of EIA or not. So the B1 industries, B1 projects will also be polluting. They will not be under mandatory licensing, mandatory EIA process, but they are still polluting. So it will be decided that they need to be assessed. And B2 are non-polluting industries. Now here, there are two categories wherein there is no permission that is required. One is startup एंड सेकेंड इज सेरिकल्चर. ठीक है, ये स्पेशली लिखे गए हैं दोनों, स्टार्टअप एंड सेरिकल्चर. SNS यू विल बी एबल टू रिमेंबर. सो स्टार्टअप एंड सेरिकल्चर डू नॉट रिक्वायर एनी परमिशन. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे ये जो है इसको बहुत अच्छे से जस्ट नो द डिफरेंशिएशन बिटवीन कैटेगरी ए, कैटेगरी बी, देन B1 एंड B2. You should be knowing this. This is how the EIA process operates. So here, what is the answer? 1 is the answer. Moving on to the next one. Consider the following statements regarding various stages of environment impact assessment. Screening is the first stage in the assessment process where all A and B category projects are scrutinized. Public consultation stage is the last stage in the assessment process to ascertain the views of the local people. Which of the given statements are correct? As I just told you, स्क्रीनिंग उन्हीं प्रोजेक्ट्स की होती है विच आर अंडर बी कैटेगरी, बिकॉज ए कैटेगरी प्रोजेक्ट्स आर अंडर मैंडेटरी EIA रिक्वायरमेंट. सो उनकी स्क्रीनिंग होगी ही नहीं. सो फर्स्ट स्टेटमेंट इज इनकरेक्ट बिकॉज ए कैटेगरी प्रोजेक्ट्स डू नॉट रिक्वायर एनी स्क्रीनिंग. Now the second one, there are 4 stages and you need to remember these stages, okay? The first stage, as I just mentioned, is screening. A project comes to you, let's say a mobile screen manufacturing factory. Okay, let's say this is the project that has come to you. Now you will be screening it, that how big is the factory, what is the water requirement, and whether it needs to go through EIA process or not. So that is what we call screening. That is the first stage, and only category B projects go into it. The second one is scoping. What is going to be the scope of this project? This is the most important stage, okay? What is going to be the impact of this project on the environment? How much funding will it need to alleviate the impact of the environmental degradation that it will have? Then what are going to be, so for example, if there is a project of let's say of mobile screen manufacturing only, then there will be a huge problem of e-waste and plastic, है ना? E-waste and plastic की problem होगी. तो e-waste and plastic की problem को resolve करने के लिए what is going to be the modus operandi of this particular factory? That whole process comes under scoping. ठीक है? Then third stage is public consultation. It is public consultation, and this was very much in news in the EIA amendment, wherein from 30 days the time for public consultation was reduced to 20 days. Fine. So third is public consultation. It is not the last stage. And the fourth one, last stage, is actually the appraisal stage, where the report is made by the state environmental authorities, the expert authorities, and the environment clearance is actually given. So जैसे job आप करते हैं तो आपका appraisal होता है, right? Appraisal happens. Similarly, the project appraisal is the last stage. So there are 4 stages primarily, and public consultation is the third stage, not the last stage. Okay, so second one is also incorrect. Here D, neither 1 nor 2 is the correct answer. Next one. Consider the following statements with reference to rapid EIA and comprehensive EIA. Both types of EIA require the coverage of all significant environment impact and their mitigation. Rapid EIA achieves speedier appraisal through collection of data from all 4 seasons in one sweep. And review of rapid EIA shows whether a comprehensive EIA is warranted or not. How many of the given statements is or are correct? See, there are 4 seasons in our country, right? In our particular entire latitude, longitudinal intersection, there are 4 seasons. Fine, summer, winter, autumn, spring. Rainy आप उसमें एक डाल लेते हो. तो the thing is that in every season, pollution impacts the environment in a different way. For example, we have studied about ozone, right? So ozone sorry, we have studied about smog, not ozone. Ozone is a part of smog, but we have studied about smog, right? And in smog, there are two kinds of smog. There is winter smog and there is summer smog, which we also call Los Angeles smog, wherein there is ozone pollution as well. And winter smog mein there is sulfur pollution. So the point is that every season has different kind of pollution, and if you actually want a very detailed comprehensive environmental impact assessment, you need to have a view of how this particular project will impact this environment throughout the seasons, right? So that is what is a comprehensive EIA. But comprehensive EIA does not happen for all projects. Let's say there is a very simple toy factory, okay, and this is not a polluting industry, right? They're functioning, they're manufacturing soft toys, etc. They're not manufacturing any plastic toys, they're only manufacturing, let's say, soft toys. So that is not a polluting industry, right? So it will just go through rapid EIA, and comprehensive EIA uska nahi hoga, right? So review of rapid EIA shows whether a comprehensive EIA is warranted or not. Absolutely correct. ये आप common sense से भी solve कर सकते हो. Now rapid EIA, because it is faster, it will not collect data from all the 4 seasons. It will collect data from only one season. ठीक है? And it will, let's say आपने विंटर्स में डेटा इकट्ठा कर लिया. विंटर्स में वैसे भी पोल्यूशन ज्यादा होता है, राइट? बिकॉज देर इज लेस ऑफ विंड एंड देर इज मोर ऑफ हाई प्रेशर कंडीशंस. सो आपने विंटर में डेटा कलेक्ट कर लिया, एंड इन द समर्स यू आर एक्स्ट्रापोलेटिंग, इन द रेन्स ऑल्सो यू आर एक्स्ट्रापोलेटिंग. दैट इज रैपिड EIA. So second is incorrect. And both types of EIA require coverage of all significant environmental impact assessment. Yes, every aspect is covered. The only difference between rapid and comprehensive is that rapid happens just taking data from one season. Comprehensive happens taking data from all the 4 seasons. That is the difference. Okay? So yahan pe only 2 would be the correct answer. Next one. Consider the following statements with reference to public hearing under environmental impact assessment. Central Pollution Control Board shall cause the notice for environmental public hearing, and all persons affected and not affected due to the project can participate in public hearing. So which of the given statements is or are correct? Just try to imagine this particular situation. First of all, the CPCA, which act is it under? We have talked about it. It is under the Water Act. It is under the Water Act. Don't forget these things, okay? Keep revising. So just imagine there is a local project, a project of let's say LED manufacturing. Okay, LED manufacturing, or some papad manufacturing, or these kind of things. Do you really think the Central Pollution Control Board will be able to provide notices for all the environmental public hearings across the country? That is not possible. CPCB is a central level body, and it is a very precisely busy organization. Okay, so and that is the purpose of having state level state pollution control boards, right? That the state level matters can be handled by the SPCBs. So first one is incorrect. The state pollution control boards actually cause the notice for environmental public hearing. So first is incorrect. Second is absolutely correct, that even if let's say you are a public minded person, जैसे नर्मदा बचाओ आंदोलन में the woman who gained a lot of limelight was Medha Patkar. तो मेधा पाटकर जो थी, she was not directly impacted by the Sardar Sarovar Dam, right? She did not live there. She was not the one who was, impacted by the flooding, or she did not need the rehabilitation efforts also. But she still participated. So in a democracy, whether you are affected or not affected, you can participate. So basically, public hearing में you do not need to have a locus standi. No locus standi is needed. Are you understanding the meaning of locus standi? We have studied this in polity, है ना? जैसे public interest litigation में no locus standi is required, right? Similarly, in this one also, you do not require locus standi. So here, 2 only is the correct answer. B is the correct answer, and you have known about environmental impact assessment and public hearing, public consultation, which is the third stage. Next one. Consider the following statements with reference to project location under Environmental Impact Assessment Rules 2006. Industrial project can be set up in riverine floodplains. Project can be set up within 100 meters of estuary boundary and near coastal area. A distance of at least 500 meters from the high tide line must be maintained. This is about EIA Assessment Rules 2006. These are old rules. Now this 500 meter has been changed. But when the EIA assessment rules were launched, this was very clear that industrial projects cannot be set up on riverine floodplains. जैसे गंगा river plain है, तो जो flood plain है which gets annually submerged, you cannot set up the industry over there, and for very obvious reasons, right? So you need to have at least 500 meters distance from the river floodplain. Floodplain का मतलब ही है, it is very clear from the name that it gets flooded. This plain gets flooded every year. So you cannot have an industry here. You need to have a 500-meter distance. Then project can be set up within 100 meters of the estuary boundary. No. If there is an estuary, there needs to be 200 meters of distance according to EIA rules 2006. What is an estuary? Estuary is a freshwater ecosystem wherein a river and a sea are meeting, and it's an ecotone, right? So it has a very high level of biodiversity as well. Second is incorrect. And third, near coastal area, a distance of at least 500 meters from the high tide line must be maintained. This is actually correct, but this has been superseded by the coastal regulation zone rules. Coastal regulation zone rules, we'll study about it under the environment, not under EIA, under the Environment Protection Act 1986. So coastal regulation zones ke under, this 500 meter has been reduced to 100 meter. But under the EIA, the Act EIA rules, it is 500 meters only. So you need to have 500 meters distance minimum. Either it is from a riverine floodplain or it is from the coastal floodplain, because rivers can also, go off their course in high season, and in the coastal area also you can have a high tide. So जो high tide line है, high tide line means the extent, if this is the sea, this is the land, this is a tide, and this is the maximum impact, maximum high tide area. यहाँ तक high tide आ जाती है when it is a high tide day. What is a high tide day? When the earth, the moon and the sun are in the same line, so there will be a high tide day. Okay, so हाई टाइड डे पर जहां तक पानी आता है, फ्रॉम दैट पॉइंट यू नीड टू बी 500 meters away, so that of course people and industries and even the marine biodiversity does not get damaged. So third one is correct. यहाँ पे answer becomes only one, but what is important is the EIA rules 2006 are very important. Next, which EIA tool is used to identify action effect impact relation? Action effect impact relation. There should be a hyphen between them to understand better. Action effect impact relation. So there are multiple tools which are employed to study the impact of a particular project. And these four are examples of these tools. Checklist, we all know it's the major meaning of checklist. You also might be making a checklist on every other day, right? There are 4-5 checks you need to make, and this is a checklist. Then network. So this is not the answer to this. What we are trying to understand is what is the action taken, what will be the effect of that action, and what will be the impact of that particular action's effect. Checklist will not help us identify that. Network, you might think will help us identify that, but network only impacts the analyzes the impacts. Okay, so let's say if there is this particular project wherein one of the result is wastewater discharge. ठीक है, तो wastewater discharge will impact all what people. The wastewater discharge will impact the households. The wastewater discharge will have impact the aquifers, right? So this kind of a network is built to understand the impact. So this is still assessing only the impact. It is not assessing what is the action. It is actually interaction matrices, which is the most holistic manner in which you can assess anything. Interaction matrices are used to understand that what is the scope of this particular developmental project, the scoping stage, if you remember, and the primary focus of interaction matrices to identify the impact overall. ठीक है, तो interaction matrix is the most holistic one. And SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunities, threat, this is not something which is used to understand action effect impact relation. And this action effect impact relation is exactly written as it is in the EIA notification. Hence we are bringing this in this kind of a language. All right, ठीक है, तो C है इसका आंसर. Next, consider the following statements. Statement 1 is, strategic environment impact assessment is a more advanced tool in environmental management. And statement 2 is, strategic environmental impact assessment is applicable at the level of policy, planning and programs. Which one of the given statements is or are correct? Whenever something is strategic, it has policy implications. So definitely, second one will be correct, that strategic impact assessment is applicable at the level of policy, planning and program. And first one is also correct, that it is a more advanced tool of environmental management. But it is not a more advanced tool because it is applicable at the policy level. It is a more advanced tool because of the methods it employs, because of the expertise it employs. ठीक है, तो 2 is not a reason, an explanation of this particular statement number 1. So B is the answer for this one. But overall, both the statements are correct in their own manner. And strategic environment impact assessment is what our environment minister does, our environment secretary does. It's a whole systematic process wherein on a macro level, जैसे हम economy में microeconomics, macroeconomics पढ़ते हैं, on a macro level you try to understand that what is the impact of a particular project. All right, chalo, next. What is the contingency plan in EIA? A plan of action to prevent an emergency and steps to be taken when emergency occurs. A set of guidelines ensuring that a developmental project will remain within its boundaries. A plan describing the measure that will be taken to contain any waste produced by the project. And a set of guidelines for carrying out EIA. The word contingency, you have read about the Contingency Fund of India as well. Please tell me the article in the comments. What is the article for the Contingency Fund of India? Article. Comments में बताओ मुझे. So contingency का मतलब ये होता है, it's an urgency. It is an unforeseen circumstance. So A is the answer for this one. It is a plan of action to prevent an emergency, steps to be taken when emergency occurs. What kind of emergency can occur? EIA में contingency plan डालने का reason ही ये था that we had the Bhopal gas tragedy. Remember the Bhopal gas tragedy, and there was no SOP. जब इतनी बड़ी tragedy होती है, there needs to be an SOP in advance to make sure that when an emergency occurs, then you can react in a certain manner. But कोई SOP नहीं था वहां पे, which actually led to a lot of chaos, and that is why Bhopal gas tragedy led to so many people dying. ठीक है, उसके अलावा देखो that we also have an act called Disaster Management Act 2005. Right? So if there is any environmental urgency, it will take the form of a disaster. For example, the Kedarnath flash floods in 2013. They were a environmental disaster also. They were a disaster also. ठीक है? So EIA में भी this is a plan of contingency which is required when an emergency occurs, and this will happen along with the Disaster Management Act. So A is the correct answer. Next. Consider the following statements with reference to the scoping in EIA. It is a systematic exercise that establishes the boundary of EIA. Scoping clearly indicates what is relevant and what is not relevant within EIA. And scoping serves as a work plan for the entire EIA process. So which of the given statements is or are correct? Scoping, as I told you, is the most important stage of the entire process of EIA. What is the scope of this particular project? So it's a systematic exercise that establishes the boundary of EIA. Yes. So let's say, for example, if it is a textile manufacturing factory, you are not going to include whether it is, you're not going to assess whether it is generating radioactive waste or not, because radioactive waste will not be generated in a textile factory, right? So that is the boundary of EIA. You will not waste your resources. You will assess what is the scope of this particular project. So first is correct. And it clearly indicates what is relevant, what is not relevant within EIA. As I just told you, radioactive assessment is not relevant for a textile factory. So second is also correct. And it serves as a work plan for the entire EIA process. Yes. So D is the answer. And if someone is to ask you which is the most significant, most qualitatively significant stage, it is actually scoping. Next. Last question for the day. It specifies qualitative and quantitative information collected during the initial phase of EIA. Which of the following best describes the above statement? Scoping, screening, baseline description, or mitigation? So you need to, when you're not aware exactly of the answer of a particular question, you need to eliminate. Definitely this description is not relevant for scoping, because scoping is not just data collection, and it is not during the initial phase of EIA also. So you need to eliminate scoping. You also need to eliminate screening, because screening is the very first stage of EIA and you are just assessing whether this project should be included under EIA at all or not. So this needs to be eliminated. And mitigation. Mitigation is even beyond EIA, right? It is after scoping that it is done. But if any problem occurs, then mitigation will be beyond EIA. Mitigation is a post happening, post facto kind of a action. So what are you left with? You are left with baseline description, which also goes with the entire description of this process also. Baseline description means that whichever data you have collected at the initial stages, you are actually producing that particular data in a very proper manner, qualitative data, quantitative data, both, so that you can assess and you can go forward with the process of EIA, right? So baseline description, this is the base that you establish, on the basis of which you will build more and more higher boundaries of this EIA, right? So C is the correct answer. All right, so we are at the end of this particular class. I hope you derived value out of this class and found it useful. Now EIA में से अगर question आया, एक question आएगा, that is it. But overall, it's an important topic and it will help you know that even in a theoretical concept like this, you are thorough with the concepts. Okay. All right. So the next class that we will be having will be about biodiversity. We will be starting with a lot of species. We'll be starting with a lot of, aspects of the species that we keep on reading. And that is one aspect जो लोग खुद से touch करने में थोड़ा कतराते हैं. So we'll be covering a lot of species through this MCQs, right? So thank you so much for joining. If you're enjoying the class, if you're benefiting out of it, let us know in the comments and I will see you all in the next lecture. Bye-bye.